Key value capture is when we actually grab values that are being entered by the keyboard. Now, normally the browser does a wonderful job and we don't worry about that at all, as you've seen so far. We just let the browser do its thing. But there are times where we want to use the key code, so I'm going to show you how to do this. Here is the D key, and I'm outputting the key code that we're getting in. I'm going to push Shift and now the D key, and you see that we get an uppercase D. There's the left bracket. If I use the Shift, that gives me that. Here's the backslash. If I use Shift, it gives me that. And now I'm going to hit the Enter key, and on some keyboards it's called the return key. What is that going to return? It's going to return Enter. And so what we're getting back here are strings that are being sent to us by the browser. So let's see how this works. First of all, a little bit of style. For our H1, our header here, we're using text align center so that it gets centered. The body here, we're giving it light sky blue. I'm showing you this a little bit because what we see here is probably a little unusual. We've done a little more styling than usual. So here around, if we come down here, I put is just going to be a div. So we're just looking at a div. So I put a border around the div. The border has 3 pixels solid black. I'm going to just redo this so we can look at it. The width is 500 pixels. The height is 300 pixels. And then you notice that when I enter a key, it shows up horizontally centered, and that's because I'm using text align center. I do have vertical align middle here, but believe it or not, that really doesn't matter. So I can do this, reload, enter E, and that has no effect, so we're not going to worry about that. You will notice that these are rather large. That's because I've made the font size 1000%. And then there's this margin left auto and margin right auto. What is that? It's the margin left auto and the margin right auto that centers this div here right in the middle of the screen. Okay, so that is where we are getting all of this styling. Now let's go see about how we're getting this stuff here. So we'll come down and you notice our body, very, very Spartan, just really nothing much here. We have our heading, we have a div, and the div has an ID, and that is it. That's the only thing we're doing. Here I have a function that's supposed to put the focus on this, but you know what? I can delete that. I can save it. Oh, I can say, oh, I'm on the web page, sorry. I can save this, then I can come here, reload, and that's not going to affect how this works at all. Okay, and so next, what are we going to do? Well, we'll come up and might as well look at the event handler, right? And look at this. Now this should look a little interesting to you. Here we have document.body.addEventListener. Sometimes we've used document.getElementById, but you'll notice that because there's only one body in a page, I mean, or there should be, you'd better not put more than one in there. There's only one body for a document. We don't actually have to get the body by using an ID the way we have been doing. We can just get it directly if we want to by saying document.body. That's the same as using utl.eid and using an ID for the body and having given the body an ID here. So whichever you want. This may actually be a little more typing document, although probably not too much. Actually, it'll be close to the same number of letters, maybe a little bit more. So anyhow, just realize this, because there's only one body in the document, we can access it directly by just using document.body if we want to. We're adding an event listener here, and the event we listen for is key press. So key press is the event that's going to tell us something. Oops, I put a G in there, didn't I? I don't want to do that. Let's undo. I was going to show you over here. Key press is what we're listening to when I hit, say, the G key. So when I pressed the G key, a key press event was generated, and it's listening. You notice it's listening for that event on the whole body. So it doesn't matter where things are when this happens. Right now I'm listening for a key press on the entire body. And this here is our event handler. So let's go up and look at that. Well, that's pretty simple too. You notice that here we're just saying util.eid input. So we're just getting this div right here. And in the inner HTML, we're putting ev key. We're using an event parameter here. The key, the key part of an event right here is going to hold a string, and the string will hold, in essence, the value of the key that we pressed. So if I press it, oops, you know what? I keep pressing the wrong thing, don't I? I'm sure glad for undo. So we have this key property, and this key property is what is going to hold this. And you notice that there's no target. It's not ev.target.key. The key is associated with the event, not with the target. So ev key, this property, gives us the string that is the equivalent of what we clicked. So if I do an uppercase V, it returns the string uppercase V. A lowercase v, it returns the string lowercase v, and so on. And as we noted, if I hit the return or the enter key, it sends back the string enter with the E capitalized. And that's about all there is to it. That's how it works. Now we can do a few other things with this. I have one other version of it that puts 2 Easter eggs in. And the only difference, you notice here, our event handler was very, very simple. Here, our event handler is going to be a little more complicated. And it's this one that we're looking at. So R and T and G. You know what? On this one, we haven't fixed a problem that the other one had. Right here, I have save. Oh, what we haven't done is reloaded. So now we've reloaded, so now we don't have stuff going out of bounds. Okay, so everything's working essentially the same way it did, but as you can see by this code, I've put in 2 Easter eggs. So if the event key is an uppercase A, you notice that it's going to change the body background color to Alice blue, and if I use an uppercase B, it changes it back to light sky blue. The point of this is to get you comfortable with the idea that document.body is the same thing as using util.eid and then using an ID for the body. Just as we could have, had util.eid and stuff for the body and then .style.background color, we can do exactly the same thing just using document body here. So let's see if our Easter egg works. Here's a lowercase a. Now I'm going to enter an uppercase A, and look at that. It did. It went to Alice blue. So this happened. And you notice that we check it by checking it against a string. So this is the string uppercase A. And similarly, if we look at B, and all this stuff, nothing happens until I enter an uppercase B, and then this if condition here was satisfied, and so it went ahead and changed it back to light sky blue. And so now you know how to get the values of keys that are pressed. This has been kind of an artificial sort of example. So in our next video, let's look at an example that's a little less artificial.